Alright, now I'm going to show you a super simple method for converting your black and white drawings to screen printable documents. Start by opening up Lightroom. I'm using Lightroom 5, but I'm pretty sure that any version of Lightroom will work if you have it. And also open up Photoshop, because we're going to be moving the image to Photoshop when we're done. Now that you have your document image open, press D on the keyboard while in Lightroom to open up the develop module. You'll see it switch over. I'm going to begin by cropping the image down closer into the image so that there's not as much empty document to work with. I'll unlock the crop ratio so that I can crop it right in without having to worry about keeping the ratios exact. I'll bring it right in close to my image. So we're going to make it white anyway, and so we can expand out. When you've cropped close to your image, press enter on the keyboard, and that will save your crops. Cool. First thing I'm going to begin by upping the exposure so that I can make the white as possible. Then I'm going to bring the shadows right down, because I want to make those as dark as possible. I'm going to push the highlights up. Shadows and highlights deals with things that are on the lower end of the histogram, and the blacks and the whites will deal with the half of the histogram dedicated to white. So I'm just going to push it until I get as close to black and white as possible. I'm going to raise the clarity slider so that I can bring out all of the detail. You see, I drop it down to -100. We lose all of that clarity. If I push it up, you see we've popped out all of the line work. I'm also going to bring my blacks down a bit more. I like to use even numbers, or numbers that are part of increments so that they're easier to remember, and also raise the contrast a little bit. See, I'm getting pretty close to black and white there, and I don't want to push it too much further than that, because I want to keep as much detail as possible. Other than that, I'm going to sharpen it and remove some of the noise. I don't like to push above 25 on luminance or above around 45 on color, because you start to lose a lot of the detail. And I'm going to push the sharpening to about 50 or 55. If you press this little button here on each of the palettes, it will turn the edits off. So you can see that by using those, I've sharpened up the line work and brought out some more detail. We want to bring the drawing as close to black and white as possible, yet maintain as much of the detail that we've placed in the drawing when we made it on paper. Now that we have our image edited, press G on the keyboard to return to the grid view of the Lightroom module. Make sure that you have just the image you wish to edit selected. Right click and click Edit in Photoshop, or press Command E on the keyboard, and that will transfer us directly to Photoshop, where we can edit the image. Once you've brought it in, my first step is going to be to create an adjustment layer with the levels. So if you see this little half white circle down here, it says create new fill or adjustment layer. Click that and choose levels. Levels will allow us to push our whites and our blacks and our midtones in the histogram here to bring our image as close to black and white as we possibly can. So I'm going to bring the whites down, which is going to delete some of that extra detail in the paper. I'm going to push the blacks up to bring some more detail. If you press space on the keyboard, you'll bring up the hand tool, which will allow you to pan around the image. So I want to make sure that I get rid of as much of that paper texture as I can and still keep the detail in the image. If I push the midtones up, the lines will get thicker, and if I push them down, they'll start to disappear. So I'm going to push them up a little bit. You're making calls on the fly here depending on how the image reacts to the sliders. So if you're happy with the detail, the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tool and brush out some of this extra detail on the outside of the image that I want to erase. There's a few ways you could do that. We can use the magic wand tool on the background and select around the outside, like so. And then all you need to do is fill the white layer with that using the paint bucket tool, which can be reached by pressing G on the keyboard. If you press D on the keyboard, it will bring back the default colors. And if you press X on the keyboard, it will swap the foreground and the background colors. And I'm just going to use the polygon lasso tool just to, I spotted a, here we go, I'm just going to use that. To add these to the selection, and then I'm going to fill this layer with white and press Command D to deselect. Now when you print that, it should print high quality. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the crop tool, and I'm going to make a new crop preset using width, height and resolution. I'm going to set the width to be 297 millimeters and the height to be 420 millimeters. And I'm going to select my pixels per inch here to be 300 pixels an inch, which is print resolution. I'm just going to make sure I don't exceed the boundaries of my document. Press tick, and that will crop it to A3 resolution. And I'll just fill in these white spaces. And that's it. When you're done, press Command S on the keyboard, which will save the document. And then when you return to Lightroom, it should automatically update with your edited image. See, we've got black and white and our original. When you're finished and you want to export this as a JPEG, we can use the export preset dialog that's part of Lightroom to export it at print resolution. So click File and then click Export ... or Command Shift E. I try not to use the keyboard shortcut in Lightroom to export because often you forget to add the shift to your shortcut and you end up opening hundreds of images in Photoshop automatically, which is what we want to avoid. So I'm going to make a new preset. I'll select Choose Folder for Later, which will bring up a dialog box once we've clicked Export. For my file settings, I'm going to choose Keep It as JPEG, Quality is 100%. I'm going to choose sRGB, which is the most common color mode for JPEGs. I'm not going to resize to fit. I'm I'm going to select 300 pixels per inch. The reason I'm not resizing to fit is that we've already set the document at A3. I'm not going to use screen, I'm going to select matte paper for my sharpening, and probably low since we've already sharpened it. Other than that, I'm going to leave those as is. Once you're done and you've selected all of these options, click add, and we can use a new preset. I'm going to select and call that screen print setup and click create. Then when you're done, click export and it'll bring up a dialog box. I'll chuck it in my screen printing workshop, click open, and then you'll see Lightroom's exported it. If I bring up Finder, go to my Dropbox, find I can bring this up in preview. And there you have it. If you print that, it'll come out black and white and it should transfer onto your screen quite nicely, as long as the width of your lines is not too thin and fine. I'll see you back for the next video tutorial. Thanks. This is James Stanbridge. Right, bye.